Well, we pick up here in the Gospel of Matthew in chapter 26, verse 57. I usually do it chapter by chapter, but these later chapters get pretty darn long. And besides some kind of obsessive compulsive thing, I guess, where I want to do a chapter per episode, what the heck, it's unimportant, especially since there weren't any chapter divisions in the original, right? So, okay, Jesus has just been arrested, and the disciples all fled like the chickens they were. And what do you have to say for yourself, Pete? Oh, just this. Bark, 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 bark. Yeah, well, so anyway, here we go. 57. Then those who had seized Jesus led him to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the scribes and the elders had gathered. But Peter followed him at a distance as far as the courtyard of the high priest, and going inside, he sat with the guards to see the end. You know, how's this going to turn out? It's like Peter hasn't exactly betrayed Jesus or denied him yet, right? They all fled, but he just retreated to a safe distance to follow them. So, you know, he's still got some guts here. He knows he's taking a risk, but he's willing to do it. In 59, now the chief priests and the whole council sought false testimony against Jesus that they might put him to death, but they found none, though many false witnesses came forward. Yeah, I heard him saying that we ought to have a mob attack the local 7-Eleven, and there aren't any 7-Elevens yet. You're in the first century, man. Somebody else said, I heard him offer to sell somebody the Brooklyn Bridge. Same thing, there isn't one yet. Why can't you come up with something better that we could make stick? So a lot of, I'd love to know what they said that was false according to Matthew, but all he can cough up is what comes next. At last, two came forward. So in other words, out of the mouths of two or three witnesses, justice shall be established. Okay, finally, two of them agree, right? And said, this fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to build it in 3 days. Wait a minute. Didn't Jesus say that according to the Gospel of John? Stephen in the book of Acts says that not that Jesus said it, but that he would do it. He would destroy this place, etc., this temple. So what is the deal? It kind of looks like this is another one of those things that Brandon pointed out, saying that there really was something to the charges against Jesus, but they've been covered up and finessed. And this would seem to be one of them, that he had said such a thing, or at least that the temple would be destroyed and replaced, which is what the Qumran sect believed. They said, they're the one that's standing there. Yeah, it looks good, but it's irredeemably corrupt. God doesn't like the way they're doing things there. And of course, that means we don't like it. And of course, we know what God likes anyway. So it looks like that this was circulating as some kind of a saying of Jesus. But according to these canonical gospel writers, oh no, that can't be true. He can't have said that. He better not have said it. We don't need the flack. So that's the falsehood, really. I think Matthew is trying to say he said nothing of the kind, whereas probably the tradition had it that he did. But Matthew can't believe that is true. So anyway, and what does that mean, by the way? Build it in 3 days? Well, that's one of the clinchers that this had to be a sincere apocalyptic prediction. Who builds a temple? I mean, this thing was gigantically huge. Is he going to build something on the same scale? You couldn't possibly do it with 100 guys. You couldn't do it, right? So he must be talking about a spiritual temple or a miracle to happen, and that's a kind of stupid thing to accuse someone of saying as a rabble rouser or some kind of bomb throwing anarchist. So you can tell something funny's in the background here. Okay, in 62, the high priest stood up and said, "Have you no answer to make? What is it that these men testify against you?" So he expects Jesus to rebut it. I don't know what he would have done then, right? That's kind of interesting. But Jesus was silent. And the high priest said to him, "I adjure you," I'm putting you on oath. In other words, "I adjure you by the living God, tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God." Well, wait a minute. How did he even know that Jesus is supposed to be the Christ and the Son of God? Well, I think Albert Schweitzer pointed this out. He said that when Judas colluded with the high priest and arranged to hand him over, he said, "Now this ought to get him in trouble." He actually he agreed with Peter when Peter said, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." He said, "What?" In other words, Jesus wasn't saying this publicly, and told the disciples, "Don't tell anybody this." It wasn't well in Mark. It's not clear, though it's likely true that Jesus accepts it, but says, "Don't tell anybody yet." But in Matthew, he congratulates Peter for it. He says, you didn't just come up with this yourself. It's not just your theory. God has revealed it to you. That's how right you are. So Judas, who's there, by implication, the 12 are there at Caesarea Philippi when this is disclosed. When he meets with the Sanhedrin, says, "I got a little bit of information you might find useful." Peter said, "You're the Christ, the Son of the living God," and he commended him for it. So that's what this is really all about. And you know what kind of trouble that's going to lead to. People have tried it before. "Hey, everybody, I'm the Messiah. Oh, yeah, let's take up arms against Rome." So, okay, he's gotten rid of the preliminary false accusations, though why he even bothered with them, I don't know. Possibly because Judas is a single witness. He'd have to have had another one of his disciple pals come along to say, "Yeah, I was there, I heard it too." But of course, they have no interest in that. Judas is the only one, apparently, because he's become disillusioned Judas has become disillusioned with Jesus. And that's just what they wanted to hear. So, well, one says that, I guess that's good enough. So what does he say? Jesus says to him, "You have said so," which I think means, "If you say so." I remember what Bob Dole used to say in debates against Carter, I guess. Clinton. He'd say, "That's what you're saying, Bill Clinton. That's not what I'm saying." Is that the idea? I sort of think it is, right? It's evasive. It's equivocal, right? He's being cagey with him, but they figure good enough. I'm taking it the way I want to. Jesus continues in the middle of 64, "But I tell you, hereafter you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven." Does he mean he himself? He doesn't say so. I mean, of all the Son of Man sayings, even of all the coming of the Son of Man sayings, this one sounds the most like Daniel 7. So they are going to see the final end of all things, the coming of the one like a son of man to be enthroned beside his Father, the Ancient of Days. Does that mean Jesus is in this position? It just doesn't say. It's in the third person. Okay, then the high priest tore his robes. That's like the official signal of shock and mourning. I can't believe I just heard this. Oh, what a blasphemy. He said, he has uttered blasphemy. Why do we still need witnesses? Okay, there we go. Well, I was a little worried that we had only one in Judas, but now that doesn't matter. You and I have, all of us have heard it. Now, would that have constituted blasphemy, even if he was clearly saying that this was about him and that they would see him assuming the throne of the universe? Well, is that what they thought about the Messiah? Well, some did. They thought David had a throne at the right hand of God, even now up in heaven. But if they're just saying that he is claiming to be the Christ, and the Son of God need not imply in Judaism some metaphysical divine nature that Jesus is claiming to be God, as apologists always say, but rather that the Son of God, like in Psalm 2, can simply refer to the rightful King of Judah. And if Jesus claimed that, again, the wheels begin to turn, and soon the Romans are going to stomp this place into the ground. But would it be blasphemy to claim to be the Messiah? I mean, even if you weren't, right? If you say, well, obviously he's a faker, he's deluded, but would that be blasphemy? No scholar that I know thinks so. I mean, I've read loads of stuff about this, right? And it seems like what the only sense this would make is if Mark, on whom this is based, has retrojected the later Christian understanding of a divine Son of God and the debates that Christians and Jews had over that back into the time of Jesus. And so you're really hearing a much later thing, an anachronism here. And because, in fact, you got to ask yourself, who would have known this, right? Who was present that would be an informant for the Christians? Well, Joseph of Arimathea, right? Well, probably so. But the thing is that, remember, I think from the other day, or well, at least yesterday, maybe that was on the Bible Geek, there were Jews like Tobit in the Old Testament, in the Apocrypha, who made a special project of burying Jews who had died without living relatives or were criminals, and nobody would. No one would naturally see to their burial. And Joseph, like some others, would say, look, I don't care what he did, he's got to get a decent burial. And that was one of the major charitable acts in Judaism. So even if Joseph thought that Jesus was a false prophet, he might have taken the trouble to see to Jesus' burial. I mean, the fact that he did doesn't necessarily mean he was a secret disciple of Jesus, though a couple of the evangelists do say that he was. But remember, that story grows in the telling. Okay. In 66, he says to the rest of them present, what is your judgment? What's your verdict? They answered, he deserves death. Then they spat in his face and struck him, and some slapped him, saying, I sort of forgot to mention that he's now blindfolded, prophesy to us, you Christ. Who is it that struck you? in Mark, it specifies, as I remember, they blindfolded him, said, well, you don't need to see us, right? You're a prophet. Use your X-ray vision, your ESP, and tell us, was it Gaius over here or Maximus? Who did it? You ought to know, right? So that's the point of that mocking. This is interesting to me because it seems to me to refer to and to be based upon a passage in the Old Testament, like so many things, especially in Matthew are. Let's see. Remember yesterday we talked about how Matthew presumed to know that Judas was paid 30 silver shekels. Nobody else says that. He couldn't have gotten it from the other evangelists. And I said, well, it's pretty evident. He got it from Zechariah chapter 11. And they weighed out as my wages 30 shekels of silver. Then Yahweh said to me, cast it into the treasury. Or so reads the Syriac version of the Old Testament. But in the Hebrew, it said, cast it to the potter. The lordly price at which I was paid off by them. So I took the 30 shekels of silver and cast them into the treasury or to the potter in the house of Yahweh. Well, what does Matthew do with that? He has Judas get 30 shekels, and he tries to return them to the priests who say, no, you did the job, you get the money, you know, just get out of here. It's up to you from now on. And he throws the coins into the temple treasury, and just like it says in Hebrew. But then the oh so pious Sanhedrinists say, we can't leave them in the treasure because let's face it, they're blood money, they're bounty money. And that's, ill-gotten gains technically, so we can't put them back into the temple treasury where they came from. But maybe we can do an act of charity with them. Yeah, right. Hey, they're running out of graves over there. It's like an old Johnny Carson joke. He said that the Forest Lawn, big cemetery in Los Angeles, is getting so overcrowded, they're not going to bury anybody laid out flat, but they're going to bury them sideways in a small slit in the ground. And he said their policy is when you're out of slits, you're out of beers, right? Beer, another name for your grave. And this is when they used that commercial, right? Boy, I had my wife's grandmother cracking up at that stupid joke. Anyway, they're saying, well, since they're out of slits and out of beers, maybe we can buy land for an adjunct to the cemetery, the Potter's Field, and we can bury the indigent dead there. So that's how Matthew works in both readings of that's textual opportunism if I ever heard it, right? Let's take one from column A, the Syriac text, one from column B, the Hebrew text. Hey, isn't it one or the other? Yeah, let's toss them both in. What the heck? Okay, now what about this? Well, this one seems to come from... here's the bookmark. This is a goodie. Oh, this whole story is just great. Let me just give you a teeny bit of background. Jehoshaphat says to Ahab, the king of Israel, I'd like you to join me in a crusade against Syria. What do you say? If we're both involved, surely we're going to win. And Jehoshaphat says, well, I would like confirmation on this for an oracle of Yahweh. Can you bring in any prophets and ask them? Oh, sure, I got a whole staff of them. Brings in, 400. 400 of them. Says, okay, guys, we're thinking of attacking Syria, both of us together. we going to have a win or not? What do you say? And like a chorus, they say, "Oh yeah, go ahead. You got the blessing of Yahweh. You'll clean their clock." And Jehoshaphat says, they're all saying the same thing. This seems a little good to be true. You sure? Are there any other prophets we could? Let's get a second opinion. He says, well, there is one guy, a real troublemaker, a pain in my behind, named Micaiah ben Imlah. I seldom consult him because he always says what I don't want to hear. But if you insist, hey, somebody bring Micaiah in here, and they do, these guys are like paid yes men, right? This is the only one with any integrity. And so he says, battle. Oh, I'd say your chances are 100%. Go ahead. You're going to beat them all to hell. And the king says to him, I can't believe that's what you really think. Come on, level with me. Give me the bad news. And it's, well, okay. And he says, in fact, just the other day, I was standing in the heavenly court with God and all the sons of God, and they happened to be discussing, I would really like to screw up the king of Israel. Anybody got any ideas? And the different angels or sons of God, whatever, they're coming up with different schemes. Well, how about if we did this? How about if we did that? And finally, one of them said, well, how about this? I'll volunteer to become a lying spirit in the mouths of the king's paid prophets. And I'll tell him, yeah, go ahead. And then he's really going to get it when he tries it. Okay, great. There'll be a Christmas bonus for you. You're on, do it. And so, and Micaiah says, that's what you just heard. And then he says, Jehoshaphat, what I tell you, this guy's like Don Rickles here. Let's see. And then Zedekiah, the son of Chenanah, came near and struck Micaiah on the cheek and said, how did the spirit of Yahweh go from me to speak to you? And Micaiah said, behold, you shall see on that day when you go into an inner chamber to hide yourself, from the invading troops. What's that? Jesus says something that, a prediction, mind you, that they regard as blasphemy. And so what ensues is abuse of Jesus, where they're slapping him. And he says, well, nonetheless, you will see when the Son of Man proceeds to the divine throne. The skeleton of those two stories sounds suspiciously similar to me. So I tend to think that this stuff is taken right out of that passage. I don't know if you're going to find that in any other commentary, which again may mean I'm a lunatic, but that's what they said about Martin Luther and others. So maybe he was a lunatic, though. Okay. What about old Pete? What about him? 69. Now Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard, and a maid came up to him and said, you also were with Jesus the Galilean. But he denied it before them all, saying, I do not know what you mean. Peter, what am I saying? I don't know what you mean. And I've been rusty on my voices. And when he went out to the porch, let me get away from this gal. Another maid saw him, and she said to the bystanders, this man was with Jesus of Nazareth. And again, he denied it with an oath. I do not know the man. I do not know the man. After a little while, the bystanders came up and said to Peter, certainly you used one of them, for your accent betrays you. Then he began to invoke a curse on himself and to swear, I do not know the man. Okay, and immediately the cock crowed, arr, arr, arr. and Peter remembered the saying of Jesus, before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. And he went out and wept bitterly. Interestingly, Mark has before the cock crows twice. And Matthew says that's kind of inelegant. Let me just make it once. Before dawn, you will have. What was the deal with the 2? I mean, if anything, you'd expect Mark had 1 and Matthew had 2. That's his usual bizarre practice, right? But I don't know. I assume it's just a literary thing to smooth it out. Okay, let's see. Let's go on to chapter 27, verse 1. When morning came, all the chief priests and the elders of the people took counsel against Jesus to put him to death. And they bound him and led him away and delivered him to Pilate, the governor. When Judas, his betrayer, saw that he was condemned, he repented and said, that doesn't mean, where's John the Baptist? I got to confess my sins. And no, he rued what he had done. He says, oh my God, I guess I should have known this would happen. Now it's all on me. So he repented and brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders. Well, that's kind of interesting, seeing as how they were at Pilate's praetorium, right? What did he go interrupt them there? No. He's saying, I have sinned in betraying innocent blood. They said, what is that to us? See to it yourself. And throwing down the pieces of silver in the temple, he departed and he went and hanged himself. Wait a minute. I thought Acts chapter 1 said that he bought a field and exploded in it. His, there she blows, and his intestines are flying out like the fire hose off a fire engine. And people are saying, yuck. I don't know who's going to clean this mess up, but from now on, we'll just tell people to steer clear of it, and it'll be called the Field of Blood, since it's a swamp of blood and guts now. Anything about that here? No. And when you try to harmonize the two and say, they were both telling part of the story, knowing that you'd be reading the other guy's gospel and put it together, come on. And they're just trying to think, what's the worst thing that could happen to this boo-hiss villain? Okay, but the chief priests taking the pieces of silver said, it is not lawful to put them into the treasury, since they are blood money. So they took counsel and bought with them the potter's field to bury strangers in. Therefore, that field has been called the Field of Blood, because it was bought with blood money, bounty money, to this day. Well, of course, that's not why, nor is the Mr. Creosote version over in Acts 1 the real reason. Right, it must have had to do with, or the most likely guess is that there was this field in Jerusalem that had exposed red clay on the ground, and they called it the Field of Blood, and no doubt had some kind of folk tale to explain how it got bloodied. I personally think it had something to do with the old Baal religion, that he was slain, and Anat, his consort, found the bloody ground and said, oh boy, I guess I know what's happened here. And she goes to the netherworld and brings him up from the dead, which does have kind of like Easter resonances, but who knows? Then was fulfilled what had been spoken by the prophet Jeremiah. Only Jeremiah didn't say it. They took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of him on whom a price had been set by some of the sons of Israel, and they gave them for the potter's field as Adonai directed me. That's not in Jeremiah, but most of it is word for word in Zechariah, right? The part we were just reading before, give me my pay if you think I am worth it. And so they did. And Jeremiah does have something about buying a potter's field or some kind of field from a cousin of his. And the simplest explanation is that Matthew, who had a great memory for scripture, didn't quite remember it correctly. He understandably got two passages that involved buying a field mixed together. I mean, it wasn't easy to look these things up. And back then, right, you didn't have your own copy in all likelihood. So that's probably it. But some had said, oh, no, it's got to be literally true. There must be, perhaps some apocryphal book of Jeremiah where you would find this. Come on. Be honest with yourself. I mean, it's not impossible, but certainly what I said is more likely. 11, now Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, are you the king of the Jews? As people say, you say. By the way, has that even come up in the Sanhedrin trial? Well, not explicitly, but Matthew probably figured you would know that Son of God often traditionally did denote the King of Israel, the King of the Jews. Jesus said to them, oh, you have said so. Again, that equivocal answer. Yeah, if you say so. But when he was accused by the chief priests and elders, he made no answer. Then Pilate said to him, do you not hear how many things they testify against you? But he gave him no answer, not even to a single charge, so that the governor wondered greatly, what is it with this guy? Why doesn't he even try to defend himself? It's almost as if he wanted to get condemned. 15, now at the feast, the governor was accustomed to release for the crowd any one prisoner whom they wanted. From our sources, Josephus, Philo, anybody else, there's no record of any such custom. I mean, it could have existed and just happened to escape mention, but it seems a little counterintuitive. They would have a political prisoner and just let him go, like Sheriff Andy Taylor did in that Christmas episode of the Andrew Griffith Show, if you know what I mean. 16, and they had then a notorious prisoner called Barabbas or Bar Abbas. Now some, I think it's old Latin manuscripts of Matthew, which of course were translated from earlier Greek manuscripts than the ones we have available. Some of them say he was named Jesus Barabbas. Now, that's not too surprising. There were other people named Barabbas or Bar Abbas, the son of Abbas. Like the head of the Palestinian Authority today is known as something Abbas. Very similar. But it means the father. It's kind of an odd idea for a name, but it was a name. And Jesus, well, of course, Yahashua, that's very, very common. So the fact that he might have been named Jesus, the son of Abbas, that's not too surprising, but given that we're reading a Christian gospel, your eye suddenly stops on a name Jesus, son of the Father, right? Now, what is going on here? Well, you cannot help but suspect, not prove, but suspect that this is some kind of original docetic thing. That in the sense that Muslims believe in that Jesus wound up not being crucified, but somehow there was a mix-up so that somebody else substituted for him, like Sidney Carton in the Tale of Two Cities. It was a tale of two Jesuses, right? And so that somehow Jesus slipped away. Jesus, the Son of the Father, was let go, whether openly or clandestinely or whatever. but where am I? Yeah. So when they had gathered, Pilate said to the crowd, "Whom do you want me to release for you? Jesus Barabbas or Jesus who is called Christ?" So he's saying, well, we got two guys with the same name. So which Jesus do you want? Jesus Barabbas or Jesus whom they say thinks he's the Christ? But he especially wants to do this because he knows there's something funny going on here, that he's being manipulated. For he knew that it was out of envy that they had delivered him up. So he's trying to give him a chance. He figures maybe Jesus is thought to be the Christ, and his fans will make some noise. "Oh, free Jesus, who's called Christ." It says, so maybe I can let this guy go. It sounds like he's being railroaded, and I don't want to be party to that and give him the satisfaction. So let me give an off-ramp, as they say, to Jesus here. Now it gets even more strange. Let's see, 19. "Besides, while he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him, 'Have nothing to do with that righteous man, for I have suffered much over him today in a dream.'" What does that mean? Boy, this is annoying that it could mean a couple of different things. I always took this to mean that she was tossing and turning in a nightmare involving this. I mean, it needn't have meant any more than she was dreaming about the crucifixion. Now, how would she have known she was seeing Jesus? Did Pilate inform on everything he did? Like, "Don't ask me about my business." I don't know. But I thought somehow, we're to believe that she knew about this case, and also thought, it does sound like they're just out to get this poor guy. And she had a nightmare about it. Maybe I ought to do something. And maybe that's what the dream is telling me. But I can't help but think of these later Pilate apocrypha, because there were a bunch of them. The report of Pilate, even an Acts of Pilate, and so on, and they're all trying to exonerate Pilate again because they're trying to butter up the Romans and shift the blame exclusively on the Jewish Sanhedrin. Now, let me just give you a parenthesis within a parenthesis. I mean, you know how I like to be a pedantic windbag. Some people say that if you say that there was Jewish involvement in the death of Jesus, you're an anti-Semite. Wait a minute, let's not go overboard here. There's some nasty anti-Jewish stuff in the New Testament for sure. Just ask Tovia Singer, right? He's very alert to it, very sharp-eyed reader of the Gospels. But it's important to know that this bunch, the Sanhedrin, was very unpopular with patriotic Jews. In the Mishnah, it refers to the serpents of the house of Annas, the high priest. So these guys were rogues any way you cut it. They're the villains, whether you were a Jew or a Christian or disciple of Jesus at the time. So though the church stupidly and maliciously forever after blamed the whole Jewish people for this, that's not an excuse for us to misinterpret the thing in the other direction, right? They're supposed to be villains in any case, just as much as Judas is, right? Okay. So what is this alternate possibility for the meaning of Procula's dream, as tradition calls her? It may mean that she had a dream in which she is a Christian being martyred on account of her loyalty to Jesus. Because later on, they did have the idea that Pilate and his wife, as ridiculous as it sounds, converted to Christianity and later died as martyrs. So maybe that's got a foothold here already. I don't know. But at any rate, why does Matthew include it? Well, he's trying to whitewash him, but from another standpoint, perhaps an earlier one, he knows that people know that Pilate was a Jew hater and used to outrage pious Jews any chance he got. And so they said, well, now, why would he give a damn what happened to Jesus? Innocent or guilty, what would he have cared, given his track record up to this point? I mean, eventually even the Romans got sick of his atrocities and fired him. Right. And he said, well, so Matthew's saying to himself, there must be some extraordinary circumstance to motivate Pilate's uncharacteristic clemency here. And so these are his guesses. Now the chief priests and the elders persuaded the people to ask for Barabbas and destroy Jesus. And so, whom should I release? Jesus called Barabbas or Jesus called the Christ? And so, give me a J, give me an E, SUSCHRIST, crucify him. So they're rabble rousers, literally, right? And they said Barabbas. Pilate said to them, what shall I do with Jesus who is called Christ? And they all said, let him be crucified. And he said, why? What evil has he done? But they shouted all the more, let him be crucified. So when Pilate saw that he was gaining nothing, but rather that a riot was beginning, he took water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying, I'm innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourselves. Interestingly, those are the same words, the last few, that the Sanhedrin said Judas. Right? Hey, see to it yourself. Okay. Let's see here. Oh, yeah, here we go. This is a powerful verse. And all the people answered, his blood be on us. You don't want the responsibility? We'll gladly take it. And on our children. Then he released for them Barabbas, and having scourged Jesus, he delivered him to be crucified. I think I'm going to stop there and go into questions in just a minute. But this has been called the blood libel. That those Jews, they asked for it. They crucified the Son of God and then admitted, yeah, we're guilty. What the heck? Let his blood, the responsibility for his death, attach itself to us and future generations. Once again, that is awful, no question, right? And yet I think it has been, well, I know it's been overinterpreted. There is nothing said is God obliged to say, well, I heard what you said, and you're going to wish you hadn't said it because I'm taking that to mean all future Jews. Is that what they actually said? No. And it says our children. I think you have to take the more modest implication that they mean our children, the next generation, because that's when in 70 AD, like 40 years from about this time, that's when Jerusalem is going to be destroyed. And that, Matthew figures, is the punishment for the people demanding the blood of Jesus. And it doesn't have to do with the whole Jewish people, but rather the mob that demanded Jesus' death and their children possibly ruining everything for the whole of Jerusalem, at least, which is why the Romans flattened it. Okay, but there's yet another dimension that I cannot resist. This may seem contrived to you. It doesn't to me. It's more like He who has ears to hear, let him hear. This calls for wisdom. Let him who has understanding count the number, etc. This sounds suspiciously like, again, when Jesus, I mentioned this at the Last Supper passage, when Moses has just concluded the covenant of laws, and he says to the people, well, what about it? Are you going to sign on to this and make a covenant with Yahweh or not? And they said, yes, his blood be upon us. And so he takes a pan of the sacrificial blood and slings it out onto the front row of the huge crowd, and then sprinkles more of it on the stone tablets of the covenant. And he says, okay, this is the blood of the covenant. And that's what was being alluded to by Jesus at the Last Supper. This is my blood of the new covenant. I think the other part of it, where the crowd of the front line crowd of the ancient Israelites are saying, yes, we will be party to this, and the blood be on us and our children. So I have a hunch that there is a double meaning here, exactly analogous to one in the the Passion narrative of John. You remember when they're consulting together, as they like to say in the Bible, what to do about Jesus? They see this what then to do about this Jesus mania. His half-witted fans have gone out of control, and so on and so what can we do as glamour increases? He's every minute he's top of the polls and so forth. Caiaphas says, how stupid can you guys be? Isn't it obvious what we have to do? Isn't it preferable that one man should die for the whole nation than that the whole nation should be destroyed by Roman repression, right? And so they decide, okay, it's got to be Jesus. Now, in a sense, he's actually saying, let's arrange for Jesus to die to save the people. Of course, he's not thinking of it as an atoning sacrifice. It's just a legal maneuver. But the evangelist says, as high priest that year, he had a special gift of prophecy, as they all do temporarily. And so, though he didn't know it, he was predicting that Jesus would die for others and save them, just not in the sense he thought. But this is an old idea, right? That the Oracle of Delphi would give prophecies with two possible meanings. If you go to war with Persia, a great empire will fall today. Hot diggity, that means we're going to win. Hold on there. It means somebody's going to win. It might not be you. So same thing, I think. And so what Matthew is saying, yeah, this accounts for the coming fall of Jerusalem, which has already happened by the time he's writing. But you can read it another way, that Jesus' death will, his blood will save the children of this present generation and so on. So again, I don't think you're going to find this elsewhere, but I'm just trying to pat you on the back for your wisdom in listening to the Bible Geek. Okay, let's see. Let's look at our questions. We got some goodies here. Oh, yeah. All right. Tony G. So Jesus performed miracles with witnesses. So why, when he was challenged by the elders, why not just perform a miracle that only God could do? Wouldn't that convince them? Well, as I think it was Voltaire said, it would only convince him that God could let him do a miracle. There's no necessary connection between a statement and a freak event. And so, and this also has to do with the idea that miracles are based on faith. They're not created by faith, or they shouldn't be, because then you're letting cheap charlatans and fakers manipulate you. That's the whole idea, even in the New Testament. False miracles, lying wonders. I always thought that meant miracles done by a prophet of some other god that really were miracles, but they were false in the sense that they were false in purpose, trying to lead you to worship Baal or something. But I'm more and more thinking they're referring to conjurers' tricks. We know they did them in the ancient world, and stage illusions. One of them is mentioned in the book of Revelation, where it says that the false prophet is able to animate a statue of the beast. Well, they did that all the time with inner clockwork stuff to make it move and so on, and to make it speak. Well, that's just voice throwing, ventriloquism, which is described as such in ancient texts. So the gullible rubes in the audience would say, "Oh my gosh, he's brought it to life," and so on. But it was just a cheap trick. And I'm guessing that's what they think Simon Magus did. He just built to these yokels in Samaria to say, "Oh my God, this guy's got to be God himself," and he's just raking in the bucks and offerings. But I love the way this is done in The Last Temptation of Christ, where Pontius Pilate, played by David Bowie, is going in to interrogate Jesus, who's sort of chained up and sitting there, and he says, "I'd like to see you do a miracle." And Jesus says, "I'm not a circus animal. I don't like a dancing bear. I don't do funny things on command." That, I think, sums it up perfectly. And Jesus says, "Why should I do a sign for you? Who asks for such things except the wicked and the adulterers," probably meaning worshipers of the wrong gods. Excuse me. So it's a wicked and adulterous generation that they're the kind of people that seek a sign, and they ain't a getting one. And that could mean that, as Muhammad supposedly says in the Quran, yeah, you're asking for a sign, but you're just going to have to believe it or not. That's what counts. God has to prove something to you. But, that may all be rationalization. I don't know. It's still a question I ask, too. Tony G says, let's see. Also, with these miracles, with witnesses, why wouldn't the Roman Empire put him to good use? The Romans are pretty intelligent, so you really think they would kill a man that could turn water into wine? Well, of course, the New Testament doesn't say Jesus did public miracles for unbelievers, as your own previous question pointed out. So it seems to me the way this is depicted in the Acts of Pilate, which admittedly has no historical basis, but it's what seemed plausible for the Romans to be doing. They heard stories from witnesses of miracles of Jesus and were actually checking them out. But I doubt seriously they would have given 5 minutes to such reports. They would have just said, "Oh, yeah, I'll bet he did." And said, "Look, you're just being a bunch of fools. You're being taken in by a charlatan." So I find that very easy to imagine. I really cannot imagine they would think, oh, this guy's a miracle worker. Let's put him to work. How much of a salary you think he'd want? Tony again says, healing the sick, the blind, and the deaf, feeding thousands with bread and fish, raising the dead. The solution for the Romans and the Jewish people was to take Jesus out? That just makes no sense. Well, it assumes that they would have believed all that stuff was possible, but I just can't imagine they would have, or that people would today. I mean, not people in power, they would say, look, these are just tricks. These are just stories circulated to manipulate and control the crowds. This guy's trying to get a power base by claiming or faking miracles. That's what Theudas the magician did. Hey, everybody, follow me. I've got the power to lead you to freedom because I'm going to cross the Jordan and dry it up like Joshua did, or the Egyptian prophet who said, hey, everybody, follow me because I'm going to cause the walls of the city of Jerusalem to collapse like Joshua did Jericho. Oops, didn't work. But they're trying to get a following by claiming miracles. And they probably said, oh, this guy's just another one of those. Catherine says, it's interesting that there's no record of letting one condemned prisoner go. Excuse me. Would Matthew be getting in a dig here against a group he didn't like? I've learned from you that he was wont to do that. Let's see. What would be the dig here? I wonder if you could elaborate a bit. I'm feeling pretty dense today, Catherine. Yeah, let's see. Jordan Bay. Gnosticism is the root cause of all the catastrophes of history, as Eric Vogelin pointed out. I despise Gnosticism. Did Vogelin write something about titled like Gnosticism and Politics or something? I'll have to look into that. That would really be a good thing to discuss on my Saturday show. Sure appreciate you mentioning that, Jordan. Thank you. Catherine says, it's interesting that there's no historical record of letting one condemned go. So if it didn't happen, but he said it did, who would he be criticizing? I'm not sure I get that still. Let's see. Tony says, yeah, I looked up Gnosticism. I'm like, really? It seemed like more nonsense. That's just to me, though. No offense to the people that believe in it. Yeah, I was talking the other day with Miguel Connor, and I said, what do you think is the modern relevance of Gnosticism? I mean, I'm sure you don't literally believe in the Pleroma and Sophia and all that. And we both agreed that there are insights, both psychological and sociological, that Gnostics came up with that led Carl Jung to say they were the first depth psychologists. So I think there's something to it, but I don't, it'd be very difficult to imagine somebody believing all of the mythology. Though Lynn Carter once said to me that if he were to pick a religion to believe in, and he was a hardened atheist, it would be Gnosticism, because he loved all their complex Baroque Byzantine mythology. And Catherine comments on something else. I said, pedantic windbaggery is what we're here for. Amen, sister. Yeah, all right. And Tony says the devil is always in the details. Jordan says Gnosticism is behind all revolutions, an evil philosophy created by Jews of Alexandria. Well, that is what some ancients thought too, that, well, whether evil or not, well, a lot of them did think that too, especially non-Gnostic Jews and mainstream Christians, right? Let's see, Chaim Maccabee thought that it started in Alexandria, though among people who had flirted with converting to Judaism, and they said, what am I doing? I can't buy this, and began to satirize it. Just a theory. There's no hard evidence for that. Let's see. Tony G says, didn't Jesus make a weapon out of a stick or something, a scourge, then go attack the money changers in the temple? Bad Jesus. No, we don't get mad and hit people. That goes against your teachings. Yeah, it says he made like a cat of nine tails whip out of some rope and started driving the livestock out and the humans. Whether he also lashed them, it just doesn't say. And so he did like lose it, right? But that seems to be the tip of a larger iceberg. What would have been the point of doing that except suicide by cop, as they say, unless it were part of a much bigger thing where, given the size of the court of the Gentiles where this most supposedly happened, Jesus would have had a whole bunch of armed men to occupy the space. And also, it's hard to believe they would not have been set upon by the double contingent of temple police who would have been on duty during the Passover. And that might be the insurrection in which Barabbas killed somebody. Yeah. Let's see. Dave Harden says, too much coincidence in the name Jesus Barabbas, son of the teacher, which Abba could mean that, right? And Jesus, the Son of God, almost as if we need to free one version of the same person. And that's also a Gnostic theme. Jesus is being crucified at Golgotha, but he calls either Peter or John, depending on which you read, to meet him in a cave in the Mount of Olives, where he says, you know, those fools over there think I'm being crucified, but I'm really not. I'm really here with you. What they're seeing is some kind of hologram or false image. I need somebody who knows this and will teach the secret truth. Well, that's kind of like this notion you're talking about, because you could say that the physical body of Jesus was crucified, but that he had already been spiritually resurrected. Interesting. What's this one? Okay, Catherine says she's suggesting that Matthew was setting up a group to get the blame for Jesus' death by having them call for Jesus to be crucified. Well, yeah, but who is the group? Is it all Jews? That seems kind of an odd reading when you think, wait a minute, this is just a small group of roustabouts hanging around outside the Praetorium. This is all Jews? Well, the Sanhedrin are instigating it, but that's not much of a group either. Right, so who's he talking about? He certainly is pinning it on the Sanhedrin as rabble-rousers trying to railroad Jesus. And that is if the Brandon Eisler Reimarus Jesus revolutionary hypothesis is not true. Because if they're right about that, then, of course, there's no deceit going on here. Well, I believe that's it for today. Thank you for giving us a PS there, Catherine. So I will see you tonight at 6 for the Bible Geek.